Hi, welcome back to another video. First of all, thanks to the new subscribers. I've picked up a few more since I started doing the videos again. I can see the majority of people watching still on subscribers, so if you are watching and you haven't subscribed, please do so. It is a big encouragement to keep making the videos. It's the only real way I can see that people are still interested, so when I'm picking up subscribers it does give us a bit of a boost, and it means I'm more likely to keep doing these if you're interested in seeing them. And apologies for a little break I've had since the last video. I had a week off work. Plan was to tackle the garden. We moved into the new house here about a year ago. I've been meaning to pull up the old lawn and all the flagstones and plant a new lawn. Wanted a nice flat bit of green at the back of the house. Finally got around to it. But I underestimated how much work it'd be and how old I am, I think. So I'm only just about recovered after a week and a half or so. So in case anyone's interested, that's what I was left with before, with a load of flagstones on the left and a pretty shabby lawn. I've pulled up all the grass. It's like gardening down in it, not Golfstar down. There was about 3 times that amount. Did it all with a shovel, despite the fact I was going to hire a rotavator and just chop it all up. My dad persuaded us it'd be easier to do it with a shovel. Certainly was cheaper, but I don't know if it was easier. Took us a day and a half just to get all the old grass up, but as it stands, that's what I'm left with now. I think it's going to be a lot tidier, a lot cleaner, but anyway, nothing to do with Golfstar, so let's get back to the task in hand. So I'm going to tackle what is definitely the #1 video I've had requested since I started doing this. It's going to be on putting. Up until now I've shied away from doing a putting video, mostly because I don't think I'm a very good putter. I tend to just aim it best I can, press the guide and adjust from there. But I think there's probably a few things I've picked up that are going to be worth sharing, especially to the new players. You guys who can put it in the hole every time, you can probably skip past this right now. There'll be nothing new for you to learn, I wouldn't have thought, but I thought about the best way to approach it. What I'm going to do is run through the different types of putt you're going to come across and just try and ensure you give yourself the best chance of putting it in the hole. At the end of the day, drive for show, putt for dough. Putting it in the hole is what it's all about. There's already a great video out there by Chapstick4. He's got quite a well-known technique now using counting to line his putts up. I've not got anything better than that. If you haven't watched that already, it's probably best to have a look for that as a good starting point for how to get the thing lined up initially. So yeah, what I'm going to look at is a variety of the different putts you'll see. I'll do my best to pass on the way I approach each one. I usually put it close, if not in the hole, so hopefully it'll be some help to some of you out there. Okay, so the first putt we're going to look at, and I appreciate I'm on the tee at the moment, but that's because really the first #1 thing with putting is you want to be putting your approach as close to the hole as you can. I'm not going to get it too close because it won't be much of a putting video if I was putting it to 2 yards. But before you even play your approach shot, you want to be looking at the green. We can see it's kind of going orange to red at the back here, and it's graduating down to blue at the front. So what that means is the highest point of the green is the back, the lowest point is the front. Therefore, what you don't want to do, if you can avoid it, is leave the ball this side of the hole. A downhill putt, 9 times out of 10, is much harder than an uphill putt. So I've talked about this before, but it's kind of the #1 thing. The approach is everything. If you put it to within 2 yards, you can forget the putting video. You're going to put it in the hole 99 times out of 100. Obviously that's not what I'm going to do here, so what I'll do is just drop this some distance away. I'll leave it, it's probably going to be about 10 yards short, I would say. I want to leave it off to this side so that it's got a bit of break on it for us to negotiate. So you can use that technique. A lot of it's experience as well. When you've played a few times, you'll know roughly for which pin whereabouts you want to leave the ball. It is very important, and the closer you can leave it, again, the better you're going to be able to put it in the hole. Simple as that, really. However, what we're going to do is leave ourselves what is a fairly standard putt at one of the easier courses. As you make your way through the game, you'll come across much trickier putts than this, and we'll come across them in this video as well. I'm going to try and talk as much as I can, because I appreciate a lot of the videos I've done recently I'm just flying through and hitting it and not talking too much about what I'm actually doing. So first thing we note is the cup is above us, so we're hitting it uphill. So that's a good thing. Now, it is usually a good thing. Sometimes if it's really high up, which again we'll see later on, you can get yourself into a bit of trouble with the ball rolling over the hole, which is a little trait of Golfstar. But this is ideal really as far as we're going to be hitting it uphill. Now the reason that's ideal is because you could be hitting it harder. The harder you hit it, the less the break's going to have an effect, and the less break, the easier it is to put it in the hole. You know, simple as that. So there's not a huge amount of slope right to left on this, but if I was to line this up, I would say I'd probably be aiming at about there, maybe a little bit less. And we can see now I'm going to hit the putting guide button, and that'll show us where it's going to go. So pretty good lineup in the first instance. Now what you'll also notice is where on the power marker it's predicting we should hit it, or it's suggesting we should hit it. That's not bad. That's probably where I would hit it ordinarily. A lot of the time it will really heavily overhit it, especially on the really uphill putts, and again we'll look at that later. But with this gauge, you'll notice we're using a medium putter. With a medium putter, each notch on this gauge essentially equates to around about 0.5 feet of gradient. So in the instance that the ball is 0.5 feet above us, which it happens to be in this case, I know that if I hit it around about here or above, it's going to go far enough to actually reach the hole. What I'm also considering though is the closer it is, I suppose, to this line, the more break it's going to take. So the more I go this way, the harder it's going to go, but also the less break it's going to take. So in theory, hitting it harder makes your putt a lot easier. But if you do hit it too hard, there's the chance it'll just jump right over the hole. So you've got to get the balance in your distance. I tend to give it, you know, if this was going to be 0.5 above, I would probably be hitting it bang on that line. And when you're using guides, the other thing to bear in mind is, and I can demonstrate this actually, I'm going to miss this putt, despite the fact I've lined it up bang on. So if we look at this, you'll see I line this up absolutely bang on the hole. So it's going to be around about there. If I was to hit this right on the line, that's going to go in. However, if I underhit it, which I'll kind of try and deliberately do, that's a bit too much. I've underhit it. It'll probably just about have the distance. But as you can see, it's gone way off to the left. Equally, if I do that again, but this time again using the guide for a demonstration, so I've lined that up pretty much the same way. So I'm going to line it up bang on the hole again, but I'm going to quite heavily overhit it this time, and you'll see what that's going to do. Let's just get it pretty much how it was before, and you can see where the line's suggesting we hit it. So I'm going to give it a good kind of same again really, and we should see it's missed to the right hand side. Because we've hit it harder, it's taken less break, and we hit it softer, it takes more break. You can use that to your advantage, but it's something you need to bear in mind, and especially on the really heavy uphill putts, you'll come across ones where you really want to hit it under the line that's been suggested. But let's get that lined up. It's just a balancing act really, and it does get a little bit more complicated when it's a really heavy break. So you'll also notice I'm using guides. If you don't have the guides, you're going to struggle in all honesty with the longer putts, so you want to really get good at getting it very, very close. What you also want to do is invest in the pouches. You notice it says 3 times 1 there, because I've used 2 of my guides already. I've got a pouch which is quite a big investment in coins in the game. I think it costs in total about 6,000 or 7,000 for the 3 putting guides, but a lot of the time, like in the World Championship or Tour or whatever it might be, if you're putting in some good approaches, you don't often need to use more than that. So what that means is the free guides that you pick up in the game, which are quite you get them quite often, they can kind of build up. I think it's probably been at least 2 years, probably more like 3, since I've actually bought any putting guides, and I've got well over 1,000 of them. So it's not just a case of buying your putting guides every week and spending money, possibly real money, on the game. You should find, if you make that initial investment in the guides, in the pouch guides, excuse me, that you should be able to actually build up a supply of guides for when you need them. And if you're doing 9 holes at somewhere like Waikiki, Aztec, Safari, Rolling Hills, a lot of the time you'll want to use a guide on pretty much every hole, because the putts are much more tricky to negotiate. So what I'm going to do is, I've already got an idea of the line, so I'll try and just put this in the hole just as a guess as to where we had it before, and bang, straight in. So most of the greens you'll come across in the first, if you're just getting started on the single player and if you're playing the easier courses, you'll find can be very similar to that. Obviously the closer you are, the easier it is, and you'll not get any big surprises. You've got a steady break, a regular break, right to left or left to right, or you might be straight downhill. So it's important to understand how hard you have to hit it. Right, so what we've got here, it's the same green, different pin position. The pin's at the front of the green and we've gone past the pin. So as I was saying, with your approach, you really want to leave an uphill putt. This should hopefully demonstrate the difference between uphill and downhill putts. So we've got quite a steep gradient. It's 0.9 feet below us. So the guide's going to, it quite aggressively underhits it, which, to be honest, it's not very useful. It didn't used to do that. It used to underhit it a bit for downhill putts. But I think there was a change a couple of years ago where all of a sudden the downhill putts just became way harder when you're using a guide. So again, best advice, put it as close to the hole as you can. If you don't and you end up somewhere like this, first thing to bear in mind, we've got a very similar break, albeit left to right here rather than right to left. But you might think initially, okay, last time we aimed it around about here, that'll probably do it. And what we'll find if I use the guide is that's going way to the right. It's actually a fairly tame example, but if you've got a gradient of kind, you can sometimes get 1.5, 2 feet and more. And we'll have a look again at some really extreme examples later. The guide is really heavily affected, or sorry, the line is really heavily affected by the gradient because we're hitting it softer. So it's fairly standard stuff really. If you think about in real life, you're hitting down a hill and you tapped it, there's a gradient, it's gonna take more break. So that immediately makes this a lot harder. So you can see there the gap I've got. So when I'm going to line it up, what I'm looking at is the gap between this marker and the marker when I've lined it up on the hole. So what I want to do is basically get rid of that arrow and shift it around about the same distance here. There's various people, there's a kind of something called the toothpick method that people are using, where they'll actually drop something like a toothpick or some sort of marker on their screen which will help them line this up. Maybe a good way of doing it. I don't really, it's difficult to change, to be honest, and when I normally play kind of lying in my bed and I can't be bothered to be putting it down on a table and dropping things on the screen, etc. But if you want to do that, fair enough, might help you line it up. So I'm going to guess it around about there. So because there is such a because I'm underhitting it so much, essentially what that means is if I'm going to miss this line even by a short amount, it's going to have a bigger effect. So if I've probably got a window of about between here and here where there's a chance of it going in the hole. If I don't hit it there, then it's going to miss. So let's see if we can demonstrate that. So I'm going to try and get it bang on. Probably not manage it. That was slightly over. I'm not sure how good my lineup was. So using a guide, I have just about put it in. You can see how it just hit the left hand side. That's because I slightly overhit it. I think I lined it up just about right. If I'd overhit that any more, it would have missed the left hand side of the hole. Equally, if I'd underhit it, it would have missed to the right. In general, I've found you're better off overhitting than underhitting. If you're going to do one or the other, you obviously want to catch it bang on the line if you can. But if you're going to miss one with it, if you've got a tendency to underhit it, what I tend to do, as you saw there, is actually let the marker go past the marker, I'll let the guide go past the marker and then hit it on the way back down. I tend to find that results in me not underhitting it as much. I had a bit of a problem, a bit of a putting yips with that in the past. So yeah, that's a couple of standard uphill and downhill putts to look at first of all. Right, so here we've got what is at first glance a much easier putt. It's certainly much closer. Two things to bear in mind. There is quite a steep gradient, so it's downhill by 0.5 foot. On the last hole we were 0.9 foot down, but that was over I think 15 yards. This is only 3 yards away and there's already a 0.5 foot gradient, so it's going quite steeply downhill. There's also quite a significant right to left break. Now ordinarily, if you weren't taking into account the gradient, the up, down, the slope away from you, you would maybe be thinking, okay, I'll aim it round about there. But if we hit the guide button now, you should see that's actually going to be way off, because it's suggesting that we hit it much softer than you might think. So there's two options here, and in all honesty, I would probably not be using a guide for this putt. or if I was, I would have lined it up a lot more to the right initially. But if you get left in this situation, there's two options. So the first is obviously you can adjust by the amount of break that you see there. So we've got kind of this distance here to recreate on the let's get rid of that over here, so probably something like that. However, and this is an important thing to consider, and it's something you hear a lot of people talking about, lie-in putting guides and this sort of thing, but to be honest, I've said before, I think the physics on the game are actually pretty bang on, if you think about what it might do in real life, because by moving the marker to the right, what we're doing is we're traveling over more of this this kind of area here. It's got the heavy brake on it, so therefore it's actually going to take more brake. So the further right we go, then the more brake it's going to take. So realistically, we want to adjust a little bit further to the right, and again, hopefully I can demonstrate this by hitting it. It might well still go in this actually, because it's not a huge brake right to left, and it's not a huge elevation, but I'm hoping it'll be just about enough to demonstrate. So what I want to try and do, if I catch it right on the line, if it does go in, I'm expecting it just to go in the left hand side of the hole. Overhit that just a touch. Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to show. So it's missed just to the left. Now that lineup was pretty much bang on. So the reason that missed to the left is because we moved the marker further to the right, it's taken a bit more brake, therefore it's been pushed further left again. So it's not just a case of having a look at how much it's going to brake and adjusting for the same amount. With an uphill putt with a not so much gradient, you can pretty much do that all of the time. But in the more extreme cases, especially with downhill putts, you're going to get that situation where you think, okay, I've adjusted, I want to adjust a little bit more to take account for the fact that it's going to take a bit more brake. So here we are on the 5th at Aztec. We are in, there's a tricky pin on the left hand side, there's a big hill, and this pin's helpfully right at the top of the big hill on the green. So I haven't had that good an approach because this has been my 4th shot. I've been fine-tuning it to try and leave a decent putt for the video. So this is not so much uphill, though it's slightly uphill. That's not a bad gradient to have to put up, but you can see there's a very big left to right break. So a couple of things I want to talk about here. Very similar to the last video, we're going to look at how hard you hit it is key to how much brake it takes. But also, when we looked at the medium putter earlier, we had a look at what each notch means. So if we take this line here as being where the hole is, if we hit it there, it's going to come up short, and we can demonstrate that if I just hit it on the line thereabouts, you'll see that's not going anywhere near. So we know we need to hit it a bit harder. Obviously we've got the benefit of the guide, so that'll help us anyway, but ordinarily the way to think about with a short putter is each one of these notches, as we saw on the medium putter, we said each notch is worth about 0.5 yards. With a short putter, each one of these notches is basically worth 0.1 foot up. It's a little bit generous, so in actual fact I think probably one notch is more like 1.4 or something like that. But if you go one notch for every foot it's above you, then you'll not go far wrong, you'll not leave yourself short on any putts, which is it's a common mistake, and it's not something you should ever really be doing as long as you understand how hard you should be hitting it. So one of the easiest things to do is to hit it hard, because there is an actual visual indicator on this marker as to how hard you're hitting it, and you know that each one of these notches is going to get you, at least if it was a flat green, 1 foot past the hole. So if it's 2 feet above us, again 2 notches means if I hit it there, it's going to be hard enough. Obviously it's not just how hard we hit it though, it's the direction. So what I'm going to do is aim it round about here and use the guide and see where that leaves us. So we can see that's actually going to miss, so it's going to hit the hole very close to missing on the left hand edge. So again, just to demonstrate the kind of control you've got and the options you've got when putting, I'm actually going to aim this a further bit left, so that's a line that's going to miss. Now because I know that 2 notches will get me as far as the hole, I know really if I hit it anywhere in between these 2 markers it's going to be hard enough, but the softer I hit it, the more brake it's going to take. So again, this should demonstrate if I hit this, let's say roughly 1 notch lower than it's suggesting, that's still going to be hard enough, but it should also demonstrate, despite the fact that I've aimed on a line that's going to miss, if I hit it round about there, we should see, in fact it's missed to the right hand side. So because it's an extreme break, that again gives you an idea of why, if you're using the putting guide, you have to hit it bang on the line. If you don't hit it bang on the line when there's a heavy break, you run the chance of missing. But you can use that, not necessarily to your advantage, but you can use that knowledge to help you, certainly on uphill putts and downhill putts, to kind of use the guide as an initial marker and then use the power to adjust the line rather than moving the marker left and right. It can sometimes be easier to do that. We have a more extreme example here of a downhill putt, sorry, an uphill putt. There's a big slope coming down towards us there. And this is, you'll have heard me talking before about rollover putts, and you may well have come across them, but if you haven't, hopefully I'll demonstrate exactly how that can occur. So basically, when the hole is on a really steep gradient like this, if you hit it as the guide suggests, a lot of the time, and this is a notorious hole for it, but there are others, really, if you ever see the hole kind of, really it's not necessarily going up a slope, but it's where the hole's situated. If it is on a big slope, which this one is, then you're going to see the ball essentially roll over the hole despite the fact you've got it bang on the line. Again, hopefully I can demonstrate that. So I'm not going to take a lot of break here because I'm going to be hitting it so hard, and you'll see how the guide suggests. Now, using the method I was talking about before, if we know that each one of these notches is 0.5, so we're talking about 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, maybe 0.7, so you maybe expect it to move onto the long putter. We move up to the long putter there, so you'd maybe expect the marker to be round about goes here. But if we hit the guide button, sorry, it wouldn't be there, it would be more round about here, I think. I'll get rid of all those other lines and just put this one. So I would guess I'd probably want to be hitting it around about there. If we press the guide button now, then you'll see it's actually suggesting with it way over that. We got the line up a little bit wrong as well. What I'm going to do is line it up bang on. I'm going to hit it exactly as the guide suggests. Get rid of that red line. I think that's probably just about right there. And you can hopefully see the key now is me catching it bang on the line, which is readable, but hopefully I'll get it for this time. I'm going to go up and down again, which I find easier, and I've got that actually hit that bit. No, that might actually go in, which is not what I want to demonstrate. But no, that's perfect. So you'll see that actually, even though I underhit that a little bit, it still rolled over the hole. And it can be really frustrating because you've spent ages lining it up, you think, right, that's bang on, and it'll roll right over. So the way to combat that is, obviously you need to underhit it, based on what the line's suggesting. But as we know, when you underhit it, it's going to take more break. So what I'll do, based on the knowledge I've had from before, if I line that up again, so it's exactly the same putt, you can see that's missing quite significantly to the right, but the guide is suggesting that I hit it this hard. Now what I'm going to do is, I know that this is around about, when I say 0.5 for each marker, it's a little bit over, so I'm confident that if I hit that full on with this medium putter, it will be hard enough. I'm also fairly confident that that won't go over the hole. The kind of end point here, so hitting it this hard right at the end, is the equivalent of hitting it on this line here. So that there is exactly the same as the medium putter. So you can see the guide suggesting we go a good notch over that. And bear in mind, the long putter, each one of these notches is probably, and I'm not 100% about this, but I think it's probably about 1.5 feet past the hole. So as the putting gets harder, any slight adjust, so if you miss that line by a tiny amount, that is the equivalent of missing it by probably nearly a whole notch on the medium putter. Lines all over the place here, so I think probably that's about the equivalent between these two lines here. So although you might think you've only missed it by a tiny amount on the long putter, that's actually quite a big amount if you compare it with a normal putter, a medium putter or a short putter. either way, what I'm going to do is two things. Now I have adjusted quite heavily to the right, so I'm going to bring it in a little bit. Ordinarily you'd think I'd probably want to aim it about there, but I'm actually going to aim it around about here, but I'm going to underhit it. And what we'll hopefully see, I might not put it in, but I wouldn't expect to see that rollover that we'll see. So I've aimed it right at the hole, I've underhit it, so it's going to come back in a bit more with a break, and you can see that's rolled nicely into the hole. No chance of that rolling over. So again, that's using the knowledge we've seen from the previous putts. Hitting it harder takes less break, hitting it softer takes more break. So we've deliberately gone against what the guide suggested, gone a bit further to the right than you'd normally hit it softer, and it's rolled nicely into the hole. Right, so here we have probably the most extreme example you're going to see. We're 2.3 feet above the cup, just short of 7 yards away, so we're not particularly far from the hole. I would suggest this is probably amongst the hardest putts in the game, and it'll demonstrate why sometimes try and use a guide is, with particularly downhill putts, you can usually use a guide effectively on pretty much any uphill putt. There are some extreme examples where it's very, very difficult, but you'll see here, I mean, we'll try various options with the guide to see where it suggests we hit it. So if I aim it way over here, press the guide button, see what it suggests. There's a couple of tries to get over, and okay, it's fairly well lined up. But if we adjust, you can see how soft it wants us to hit it. That's a short putter there, and it's hitting it, what is that, about 2.5 yards to go 7 yards, and it's ended up a good 5 yards past the pin. You'll see the guide, as we pressed it there, had a couple of tries really to get over the hill because it wanted to hit it softer, but it wasn't hard enough because there's a little bit of an upslope first before it then flies down that hill. So, you know, it was the first couple of tries, it was just going to stop round about here. So we know that it's going to, we need to hit it kind of harder than this really for it to get over that slope. But where it goes after that is anyone's guess really, because if we adjust by that amount, so again, we'll try and do this scientifically, which will show you what would happen if you did approach it in a scientific method, which I'm not going to do. So if we say, I need to change the medium putter to get the length. We say we're going to miss it by kind of that much, and I adjust by round about that much here. It's round about there. Now if I hit this on the line, I'll say the chances of it going in are slim to none, and it's going to miss to the left. And that's because, again, if we just see what happens, it's got to the top of a hill, flying down, and it's missed well left. So it's pretty much impossible to guess where that's going to go. So this is an occasion where really using a guide is not going to help you at all. So I mean, we could try this again. I'll just show you what that guide's doing. If I aim a bit further to the right, because that missed to the right last time, and I'll press the guide button again. So obviously you don't get the benefit of having two goes in a real game, and we'll see, look, it's having a couple of tries to get over the hill. It's managed to get over the hill, and again it's missing pretty much to the same distance left, and again it has just hit it in pretty much the same spot. So what we know is, based on what we've learned up to now, if we hit it harder, it's going to go further to the right. Equally, if we hit it harder, it's going to end up further away from the hole. So what do we do? And the answer is you guess. There's no scientific way to approach this kind of putt. What I'm going to do is just get rid of that guideline because it's not helping, and I'm going to guess if we go out there. So what I'm going to say is if we guess it round about there, the chance of this going in is slim to none, by the way, but again, it should demonstrate that we'll be actually a little bit closer to the hole doing it this way than we would have been using the guide, hopefully. Let's find out. I'm going to guess around there. So I've hit it way harder than the guide was suggesting, and it has gone in the hole. I didn't expect that. So, you know, 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100 that would have missed, to be honest. Not the easiest putt, but if you're left with a super downhill putt like that, really consider just not pressing the guide button because it's no help at all. So here we're at Whitecliff Out on the second par 5. I think it's hole 5 or 6. What we're looking at here is a bit of an anomaly. There's a couple of greens where it just doesn't read like you might think. Now I'm 3.2 yards away. Ordinary, very little break on the green. And if we were to line it up, I'd say I'd probably aim it about there. And give it a hit, but have a look at what happens. It's actually missed to the right. Now if we look at the markers on the green and play this shot many times, there's absolutely no suggestion there that should miss to the right. It's going to come in a little bit more. At no point is it going to turn away from the hole. Aim a little bit further in this time. I'll hit it a bit softer because I actually don't want this to go in. And again, you can see that's moving off to the right. And we can, when I was on the last hole at Safari, I was talking about when it's best not to use a guide. Now this 3.2 yards away, you know, if you've hit 100 putts like this, you'll think this is definitely going in. But if we have a look at what the guide's showing us here, I press, there's actually, it's almost as though there's like a dish around the hole. No indication on the markers that it's going to do that, but that's just an anomaly you'll get used to. There's this is one hole. There's I think one at Waikiki I've noticed does something similar. The 8th hole at Sands, there's a couple of areas, a couple of pins where even though it looks like an elementary putt, you press the guide button, you think, God, I'm glad I did that, because it's an invisible break on the green essentially. So we can see now we've used the guide that we want to aim it around about there and hit it on the line, and we'll find that will go in. The guide's accurate. The green undulations kind of visually probably aren't, but there you go. So by no means a comprehensive look at all the putts you'll get in the game, but you'll only ever get uphill or downhill putts, and we've looked at each of those, how the break affects your shot depending on how hard you're hitting it, and some of the tricky situations you're liable to come across. So again, number one thing to take out of it is leave your approach as close as you can, preferably slightly uphill, and preferably not too much break. It's a lot to ask, and it certainly won't always happen. If you do have to putt from distance, hopefully you'll now know the gauge, how that affects, you know, how hard you'll have to hit it in whatever situation, or how soft. When to use a guide, when not to use a guide. So quite a few things hopefully that'll be useful for some people. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Again, if you've watched and you've enjoyed and you haven't subscribed, please do so. It does make a difference to me, and it'll help ensure I keep doing these videos. That's if you want to see them. If you don't want to see them, don't subscribe. Thanks for watching.